What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Traditional Press. Today, I've got for you wonderful people out there yet another reason why monarchy is better than any other form of government. We're going to be talking about practical monarchy, and of course, practicality means money. And yes, that is the subject of today's video. So let's get into it. All right, here it is, by the numbers, monarchies versus the world. By 5 metrics, we have proven that monarchies are going to make you more wealthy than any other form of government. Economics, man, they determine the vast majority of humanity's stress levels and consequent happiness. And much work has been done by the brilliant minds at Traditional Press to get you these numbers. Yes, indeed, I have collated every single country in the world that has any available data on this subject. Just, was messing around one day, wanted to measure all these things up and figure who has the best, best economic system, whether it's monarchies or not. I was going to be a monarchist no matter what the results showed, but the results blew me away, and they're going to blow you away too. Now, listen, we measured 5 things, 5 specific metrics by which we are analyzing whether or not monarchies are going to provide a better standard of living than any other form of government. And the 5 metrics that I used were, number 1, GDP per capita, which is how much money the average person in a country will take home per year. We measured the corruption perception index, which is how corrupt a country is. And that's going to include things like bribery to legal protection for people who report cases of bribery and corruption. There's just a ton of things. And the corruption perception index is a excellent measurement of how good a country is, how moral they are, and whether or not you're going to be able to make money. And remember, all of this data that I pulled is all public, so you can check it out too. And I'll provide a link below where you can look at the detailed tables and you can see every country side by side, but we're not going to get into all that craziness on this video. Number 3, military spending as a percentage of GDP, which means how much of the whole nation's money is spent on military defense. Number 4, government spending as a percentage of GDP, which is how much of the whole nation's money is spent per year by the government. And I'm turning things slightly on their head for you conservatives out there who are watching, because what this is measuring is social programs, whether or not there's actually health care, whether or not there are railways, whether or not there are all of these different things, and how well the government is doing in that particular regard. And we are actually going to be measuring this one as a positive. And so this one is really serious because it's like, okay, how much is the government spending and what is it spending it on and all that kind of stuff. And all of that has been taken into consideration. So number 5 and last here is the credit worthiness of the nation. And that's just the entire country's credit score. And they score it really weird, like AAA to like FFF, and it's like really complicated and weird, and it was hard to convert all of that. But I figured it out for you because I love you and you're amazing people, you Traditional Press. Wonderful, awesome people. And these metrics were chosen, of course, because they had good, reliable data in these areas. And every single country that I was able to measure, I pulled the data from. If a country did not have data, they didn't get measured in whatever particular area, so they're thrown out. And there's a bunch of little small countries, these tiny little countries in Europe and other places that just didn't have any data in these things. So it's like, well, you're not going to get measured, so you're not going to count. But every single country that is able to measure, and I measured, like, this took forever. Okay, this took a long time to get all this data, but I'm super happy that I did. So results. This is what came in. We figured it out. We found it. Europe. So, one of the things I got to say, every one of these sets of areas was measured differently from each other. So I measured Europe to Europe, Asia to Asia, Africa to Africa, and so on. No way is it fair to measure an African country against a European country. They're not apples to apples. So we're going to do this by region. So in Europe, monarchies have a $35,406.06 higher GDP per capita in Europe. 35K, huge. Monarchies have a staggering 25.215% better CPI score in Europe. Monarchies in Europe just blow it out of the water. Other governments in Europe have a 0.228 higher GDP percentage spend on the military. Now, this is, of course, when Russia is considered as part of Europe and when Ukraine and Russia are actively at war. So, take that number with a grain of salt. Monarchies spend 6.06% on taking care of their weak and helpless, more than other forms of government in Europe. Monarchies have an enormous 28.82% higher credit score than any other form of government in Europe. In Asia, monarchies have $18,900.64 higher GDP per capita than other forms of government in Asia. People are making $18,000 more just for living in a monarchy in Asia. Monarchies have a 15.089% higher, better CPI score, which is the Corruption Perception Index score in Asia. Huge, 15% less corruption. Monarchies spend 0.267% higher GDP on their military than any other form of government in Asia. Monarchies spend 3.194% on taking care of their weak and helpless, more than other forms of government in Asia. Monarchies have a 20.5% higher credit score than any other form of government in Asia. Africa. In Africa, the numbers are all a little bit smaller because in Africa, generally speaking, people are a lot of times living off of $1,000 a year. They're not making as much as other nations, and the numbers reflect that. And monarchies in Africa pull about $641.18 more per person, per GDP per capita in Africa. So the average person is pulling $641.18 more simply by living in a monarchy in Africa. Monarchies have a 3.98% better Corruption Perception Index score than other forms of government in Africa. Monarchies spend 0.742% more of their GDP as a percentage on their militaries in Africa. Monarchies spend 20.13% more on their weak and helpless than other forms of government in Africa. Monarchies have a 6.52% better credit score than any other form of government in Africa. Now, Oceania. Monarchies in Oceania make about $11,833 more per person, higher GDP per capita in Oceania. Monarchies have an 8.75% higher Corruption Perception Index score in Oceania. Monarchies spend 0.5% more of their GDP as a percentage on their military than other forms of government in Oceania. Now, this is where it is a little bit funny here because other governments actually spend 17.58% more on social programs, more than monarchies in Oceania, or they're just spending more, actually. And this is only happening in Oceania. It doesn't happen in any other of the regions that we measured. And come to find out, it's because there are several representative governments in Oceania which are currently spending 150% of their GDP, like right now. So like they're going into full default. The countries are absolute chaos, and it's really throwing off these numbers. So that's why that result came out the way that it did. Now, monarchies have an 8% higher credit score than any other form of government in Oceania. Now, the Americas, North and South are included. Monarchies have, on average, $1,110.96 more, a higher GDP per capita in the Americas. And that one is pretty astonishing. Monarchies also have a 4.557% higher CPI score, Corruption Percentage Index, in the Americas. Other forms of government, however, spend 0.416% more than monarchies of their GDP as a percentage of military spending in the Americas. And, frankly, that's just because the United States is spending like way more than anybody else, like huge amount. Monarchies spend 3.732% on taking care of the weak and helpless more than other governments in the Americas. Monarchies have a 3.61% higher credit score than any other form of government in the Americas. The conclusion of all this is that monarchies beat all other forms of government around the world when measured by the strength of their neighbors. In 5 major categories, monarchies are proven to have a better standard of living for the average person in their borders than the average man in the rest of each of their respective regions. Results by the numbers: Europe is a 4 out of 5 win for monarchies. Asia is a 5 out of 5 win for monarchies. Africa is a 5 out of 5 win for monarchies. Oceania is a 4 out of 5 win for monarchies. The Americas is a 4 out of 5 win for monarchies. And worldwide, it's 22 out of 25 win for monarchies. So there you have it. Practical application here. It's better to live in a monarchy. Just because they're monarchies, everywhere around the world that you want to go, you're going to have a better chance at having a greater standard of living if you live in a monarchy than if you live in another form of government. Once again, monarchies are proven to beat all other forms of government. Thanks for checking out the Traditional Press. I appreciate everybody who's listening and watching out there today. Thank you guys. Stay strong out there, and I'll catch you all next time.
This has been the Traditional Press Podcast. Thank you for listening, and tune in next time for more traditional ideas and exploration of the why behind the what.